wore a risky outfit and flirted hard at the club, but his revenge went too far.
Sometimes life takes you into roads you never thought you would go. That's what happened to me. I took the wrong way and lost everything. Hey Reddit guys, I am Lily, a 31-year-old woman. When I was 27, I married James, who is the same age as me. So I started the story like this because it's all about James, how I cheated on him and how I lost him. Yes, how I'm also going through the consequences of his revenge. It's going to be an interesting story for you all. As for me, it is still a nightmare and a lesson at the same time. I'm also going to beg you since the beginning. Please don't be harsh on me. I know I have made some unforgivable mistakes, but it is what it is. I can't do anything. When I was 25, I met James, a young and handsome man who had caught my attention since day one. I knew he was going to someone important in my life. I felt it. I saw him at a party, to be honest. We flirted, exchanged phone numbers, and got in touch. The rest, you know it now. So guys, long story short, we knew each other, got in a relationship for 2 years, and then got married. We loved each other very much, and we really cared about each other. Also, we had a big passion, and sex with him was never boring. Well, I will talk about sex a lot here because I think it's a very important part of a relationship. I am sorry about it. We got married and everything was great. I felt complete. We both had our careers, earned well, were independent, and life was great. He was a very serious person, and I was the funny one. We completed each other. I'm a wedding planner and he is an IT engineer. I loved my job. I loved making and watching people happy. It was like my dream job. Me and James used to have a lot of fun. We used to participate in parties, go out on dates together, and go on road trips. Our relationship never got boring. We also used to try new things regarding sexual relationships, like new positions and new locations. Once we did it on the trunk of our car in a forest. We did it twice and we could not get enough. The adrenaline was the pleasure we were feeling. It really was amazing. I loved him and the way he made me feel. So this is just an example of how fun our life was. I wish I didn't cheat on him and lose him. Everything started when I met his cousin, Tom. Tom used to live in the United Kingdom, so he didn't participate in our wedding. The first time I met him was when he came back and his parents organized a welcome party for him. And we were invited, of course. Tom was a very handsome guy, and he was a year younger than me. He was tall, blonde, and had blue eyes. Those eyes blew my mind and destroyed everything I had built until that moment. The party was a surprise one, and it was a very good party because it was planned by me. It's actually true. His parents asked me to plan it for them. When he came, James introduced me to him, and he exactly said, "Oh, Lily, you look so sweet and gorgeous. How did my cousin conquer a girl like you?" And he winked at me. Was he joking? Was he flirting? I didn't understand, but I tend to get shy when I like someone, so I blushed right away and told him, he has his methods, Tom." Then he replied, "You haven't seen mine yet." I didn't understand what was going on, but I liked him. Before getting back home, he told me, "We are going to be very good friends, Lily. Can feel it." And again, he winked. I just smiled and winked back to him. While we were going back home, I asked my husband a little about Tom. He told me that Tom is a womanizer, and he also told me to be careful with him and not get too close because he doesn't take into consideration that I was his wife. I got offended at that moment and asked him, "Don't you trust me, baby?" "I trust you, but I don't trust my cousin. He is a manipulator who can manipulate everyone's mind." "Well, I don't care how he is. As long as I am yours, I would never be with someone else." "Then he is your cousin. Come on now." I've never seen James getting jealous. He told me that he saw how Tom talked to me and how he winked at me different times, and that was not a good sign. Finally, James told me that he didn't want to see me anywhere near Tom. Was that a threat? Because you know I don't like threats. He told me that it was not a threat and he was just trying to protect me from him. But the truth is, I didn't need anyone's protection. I was 31 years old, and I was able to protect myself and make my own decisions. I got mad at him actually about those words beating. He had never been the jealous type. And for his cousin? Really? I would never get jealous about my cousins, my best friends, or anyone else, as a matter of fact, because I knew my husband and I trusted him. This trust game would kill both of us in the future. And his warnings were so right. I was the one who was being doubtful about what he was saying related to his cousin Tom. The first time that I saw Tom, it already felt like he was flirting with me. I didn't want to believe it because he was my husband's cousin. James and Tom grew up together, so I could not believe he was flirting with me. My husband also didn't want to see me anywhere near him. You know what the strange thing is? That I liked him. I even liked him flirting with me. I would never say that to my husband because I thought it just felt like it could be liked by someone. I mean, I was still attractive. My husband lately didn't say even a nice word to me, never a compliment, and I needed it. I needed or wanted him sometimes to tell me that I was beautiful, or that I looked sexy and those kinds of things. I always tried to look good and attractive, but I never heard a nice word from him. He would say something only when I asked him how I looked. Well, we, women, want to feel loved, liked, and appreciated, and I wasn't feeling any of this. Until now, I had only told you about the first time I met Tom. The second time I saw him was the next day. He came by and asked about James. I told him he was still working. You can call him and meet him later when he comes back home. But then he said, "Since I am here, why not take a coffee with you? Won't you invite me in?" he said. I invited him in. He came in and he had this look into my eyes. I felt like he was flirting with me only with his eyes. I felt so uncomfortable and I didn't know how to start a conversation, but he was that kind of guy that would never stop talking, so he didn't leave the situation in my hands. So tell me a little, how did you and James meet? I told him it was a kind of cliche story because we met at a party and then we started chatting and talking. And then the story went on. And here we are, married and planning to build a family together. Then I asked him, "How about you? Do you have anyone in your life?" "No, I don't. When I first saw you, I wished you were single. I didn't know you were my cousin's wife," he said. "That's clearly a lie because I guess you have seen our pictures on social media, like Facebook and Instagram," I told him. He smiled and told me he was joking. He was clearly flirting with me, and again, I liked it. I had those kinds of feelings about talking to him, and I was afraid to stay alone with him. I mean, afraid of myself. I had to come to my senses. He was my husband's cousin, and hey, I was married. I wasn't allowed to have feelings for someone else. No. We had a coffee, and while he was in, my husband came back home from work. He said hi to him and gave me a kiss. I could see he was angry because he had told me that he didn't want to see me anywhere near his cousin Tom. But I was not one that you could give orders to. I was not a girl that would live the life as others wanted me to. So I didn't care if he was angry at that moment. I wanted him to understand why he didn't want me to be near him. The truth is that I understood my husband, because Tom really was a womanizer. He was flirting with me in our house, and he didn't care that I was his cousin's wife. But Tom didn't stop flirting with me even when his cousin and my husband came home. He kept staring at me in a strange way, and he also said he needed me to plan an event for him. I told him that I planned weddings and asked him if he was going to be married, and then he answered, "I can't get married because you are already married." Then I smiled and turned to my husband. "Don't worry and don't feel jealous, I'm only joking." My husband was going out of his mind, I could notice it, but he just laughed. I blushed, but I will not lie. I was feeling liked, and I liked it. I also liked Tom. Finally, a man who still knows how to flirt and make a woman feel good and attractive. He really wanted me to plan an event for him. It was going to be his birthday soon. He was going to be 30 years old, and he was planning to have a big party on that occasion, and he wanted me to plan and organize everything. I was in a position I would never want to be in because my husband was staring at me like he wanted to tell me not to do that. But at that moment, I didn't think to tell him I was busy and I could not organize his birthday party. I just asked him, "Are you serious? Can't you do a birthday party by yourself?" He told me that he wanted it to be perfect, and besides that, he didn't have time for that. So I said yes. I could see how angry my husband was, but Tom seemed very happy. After that, he left, and me and my husband started fighting over me deciding to help him with his birthday party. My husband told me that he only wanted to be near him because planning a birthday party for him was not a big deal. I asked my husband not to be jealous because I would only organize his party. I was not going to sleep with him, and I would never cheat on him, neither with his cousin nor with someone else. But I was going to do that. Tom was planning to have a good big party for his birthday, so I was going to meet him various times and be alone with him. My husband seemed to make peace with that fact, and he also seemed to trust me when I told him that everything would be all right and I would not cheat on him. Never. But it was not like that, because during that time he was being very observant, and I would find that out later. Sometimes he asked me if he could come with me when I used to meet Tom regarding his birthday, and I would say yes, even if I didn't want him to come. Tom was always flirting with me since day one. Later on, he started to avoid that in the presence of my husband, but James knew him very well. Also, at that point, Tom had my phone number, and we would also message each other every day. He made me laugh a lot. He was so different from his cousin and my husband, James. James was very serious. He almost never told a joke. Instead, Tom would always crack a joke and make me laugh even when I was sad about something. He always told me that if I wasn't his cousin's wife, I would be his wife. He said it as a joke, but I like it. But lately, he has been more serious and hitting on me without joking. He would provoke me and come near me, smelling my hair or touching it, touching my belly gently. I'm so ashamed to accept it, but when he touched me, I would tremble. Something beautiful was happening between us. It wasn't actually that beautiful because I was married to his cousin, but I liked it anyway. One day while we were taking a look at the place where I was going to organize the event, he came on my back, smelled my hair, and kissed my neck. I trembled. I was shaking. I wanted to turn and kiss his lips and feel his body touching mine, but instead I turned and acted angry. "What are you doing, Tom? I'm your cousin's wife." He didn't speak but started kissing my lips passionately, and then I couldn't stop. We kissed and had sex. He kissed every inch of my body and then grabbed me into his arms, put me over a table, and took my clothes off in an impatient way. I also took his clothes off, and I was impatient to feel him inside of me. It was amazing. I had been imagining this scene for some weeks, and finally it happened. That kind of sex was wild, and with my husband, it had been a long time since we tried it. After that, I felt full, like I could go against the whole world and win. We got dressed very fast because we didn't want anyone to come and find us there. Maybe James because he knew where I was. Tom told me he felt amazing the same way as me. He also told me that he liked me a lot. He said he didn't want to do that to his cousin, but he was beginning to like me a lot. He never talked about feelings. Me? I was beginning to have feelings for him, but I knew that was a mistake. That day I went home and I was feeling so ashamed to look my husband in the eyes. He just asked me how everything was going and I told him fine. We had everything planned and Tom's birthday was going to be in 4 days. Those 4 days I tried not to talk to him or answer his messages. A night before his birthday, he texted me again. "What are you wearing tomorrow? Please wear a dress where I can easily reach you and give you an orgasm." Oh my God, was he normal? He wasn't, but neither was I. Because when I read that message, I got really horny and started thinking about the next day. I told him I was going to wear a black sexy dress that would blow his mind away and then turn my phone off because I could not handle reading other messages from him. The next day it was his birthday, and the party was in the evening. I went there before to check if everything was right, and I also found him there. It was just the two of us and the staff. He grabbed my hand and led me to the women's bathroom. For the first time, I had sex in there. Me and my husband used to have a lot of sex adventures, but we never did it in the bathroom. But guess who had come there before the other guests too? My husband. He had come near the bathrooms and heard us screaming, he told me I saw later. He knew everything, but he acted like he didn't. But now I know how he felt because I am feeling the same way. That day he acted like nothing, but I could see his madness in his eyes because Tom started doing what he did best, flirting. I flirted back with him, thinking my husband would not get jealous anymore about him. He told me in front of my husband that I looked sexy in that dress, and he would stare at me in a way like he wanted to undress me in front of everyone. James came near me, and he told me that my dress was over-exaggerated. I thought I was sexy and beautiful, I told him. James was very jealous, and I could see it in his eyes. He didn't talk anymore. Instead, he started flirting with my best friend and my colleague at the same time. He was doing that to make me mad as well or make me feel the same way he was feeling. It really changed my mood, and I started getting very jealous of him. Later during the party, I didn't see my best friend anymore. She had gone without even saying bye. She was there because of me, and because she helped me with the party. After a few minutes, my husband told me he had to go home because he was not feeling well. He told me that I could stay, and at that moment I trusted him. He went home, and I stayed. After 2 hours, I said bye to everyone, especially Tom. I told him that the sex in the bathroom and the party organization were my gifts for him. I kissed his lips one more when he accompanied me to the car, and I went home feeling happy. The shock would come when I would reach home. In our bed, in that same bed we made love 1,000 times, I found my husband and my best friend doing it. I could hear their moaning from the living room. My world fell apart. I didn't know who was there with my husband, but I could not stand there and not look. So I went there and found them doing it. They didn't stop until I started screaming. My husband then told me, "What did you finish with Tom? I heard you moaning in the bathroom, but I didn't interrupt your fun, so why are you interrupting us now? Why the hell on my bed and with my best friend?" He told me that I deserved it. My best friend felt so ashamed and just said sorry. I could see that she didn't know what to say. They both cheated on me. So I dressed sexy and flirted at a party, and he made sure I'd regret it forever. He took his revenge the hard way. I cheated on him with his cousin, and he did the same to me with my best friend. So I lost my husband and my best friend as well. But that scene made me come to my senses. I had done the same thing to him. He was right to do that to me. But how could my best friend betray me? We had grown up together. I had helped her in everything. I found her a job at the company where I was working, and this is how he rewarded me in this way? My heart was broken in 1,000 pieces. My world fell apart. I was the one who did this. I thought my husband would not find out. He was not stupid. Of course he would understand everything, and he made me regret everything. His revenge destroyed me, but I knew I had destroyed him as well. Our marriage and the life we had built were falling apart all because of me. Yep. My husband told me that he never wanted to see me again. He said I had an hour to take all my things and get out of his house. Then he took my best friend, and they both went out in the middle of the night. It was almost morning, actually. I had never felt more humiliated in my life. I started crying. I hated crying, but I started packing my clothes. I called a taxi and went to my sister's apartment. Humiliated, broken, and destroyed it all, I didn't know what to say. What would I tell my family that I cheated first and my husband took revenge on me? No matter how bad it looked, I had to be honest. I could not lie anymore. I had lied enough, and I had done enough damage. But that scene, guys, of them doing it in our bed, I will never forget. It was traumatic, and the hardest thing I have had to go through in my entire life. This is my story, guys. The story of how I turned into a cheater and how I was humiliated and cheated on because of my decisions and actions. Please be gentle and kind. I'm already going through a lot. I hope you all have a great life. Thank you for reading my story. I'm Lillian. Update. Hello, guys. I'm back to give you an update because I have seen that you have still many questions about my story. Most of them are related to Tom. You have asked if I continued the relationship with him, and also have I heard from my husband. About Tom, I have seen and talked to him, but I didn't want to continue with him. To be honest, he was not okay with it. We both decided that what we did was a mistake because he cheated and betrayed his cousin as well. My husband didn't deserve that. So no matter how charming and attractive Tom was, I could not have a relationship with him. So we just talked and decided that it was better for us to go our separate way. My husband blocked me everywhere. I knew he would do that. But actually, after watching him have sex with my best friend, I don't want to see him anymore. It was over, guys. I hurt him, and he hurt and humiliated me. He cheated and made me see. So this is life. Falling into its traps is easy. Don't do that, guys. Keep the person you love close, and don't let anyone destroy what you have, because you see now what I'm going through. I am living a nightmare. Every night I see them in my dreams, doing it in my bed and weakening up just to realize that it all happened to me. Who would have guessed? It's really a nightmare. I can't work properly. I'm not eating or I'm not even sleeping anymore, but I have to go on. I'm not acting innocent because I know it was my fault from the beginning, but I guess I am paying the consequences. I'm paying for what I did. This is it, guys. My story ends here. Please advise me on how I can start living again and how I can forgive myself and go on with my life. Much love, Lily.
Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd be posting here, especially about something this personal. But here I am. I guess I just need to get this off my chest. You ever have one of those mornings where you wake up and something just feels off? That was me on that fateful day. The birds outside our window were still chirping. The golden hue of dawn was peeking through the blinds, but something just wasn't right. My eyelids felt heavy as I blinked the sleep away, adjusting to the semi-darkness of our bedroom. Stretching, I turned to where my wife, Serafina, usually lay curled up beside me. But instead of the sight I was accustomed to, her wrapped up in her baby blue nightgown, I saw her oddly half-dressed. It looked like she had started to change into her day clothes but gave up midway. Her blouse was on, but it wasn't buttoned all the way, and her jeans were tangled around one ankle. Her other foot still had a sock on it. I blinked a few times, wondering if I was still dreaming. "Sarah?" I mumbled, voice groggy from sleep. She seemed a bit startled, almost guilty, as she looked at me. Her usually vibrant hazel eyes looked a bit distant. "Oh, hey," she replied, her voice sounding a bit out of breath. "Why are you dressed like that?" I asked, trying to sit up, the sheets wrapped around me. She hesitated for just a second, but that second was enough to set off alarm bells in my mind. It was just really warm last night, you know? I thought maybe if I changed, I'd cool down a bit, but I got tired and decided to just lie down for a bit. I frowned, trying to process her words. We had air conditioning, and it was always at a comfortable temperature. In fact, she'd often tell me she felt cold during the night, so this didn't add up. "You sure you're okay?" I pressed, feeling a strange knot of worry forming in my stomach. She forced a laugh, her eyes darting away for a second. "Yeah, just one of those nights, I guess. You know me, always overthinking stuff." I wanted to believe her, really I did. And maybe if it had been any other day, I would have just taken her word for it and moved on. But some gut feeling, told me this was just the tip of the iceberg. For a moment, we just looked at each other. There was a tension in the air, one I couldn't quite put my finger on. But instead of pushing further, I decided to let it go, thinking maybe I was just overreacting. "All right," I said slowly. "Just let me know if something's up, okay?" She nodded, giving me a weak smile. "Always." I turned back around, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. My gut told me something was off, but I brushed it off, thinking maybe I was just being paranoid. Oh, how I wish I had listened to that nagging feeling. Edit. Wow, didn't expect this to blow up. Thanks for the awards, kind strangers. We'll update soon. It was a typical Tuesday afternoon. Work had been grueling that day, so I decided to take a break at my favorite downtown Chicago cafe, Bean and Whistle. The cozy ambiance and top-tier coffee always managed to soothe my mind, even on the worst days. Grabbing a corner seat by the window, I settled down with my laptop, a steaming mug of cappuccino, and a blueberry muffin. The warm, rich aroma filled my senses, and I felt the stress melting away. That is, until I overheard the conversation. The cafe was relatively quiet, with just a few other patrons around, their murmured conversations creating a soft background hum. But 2 tables away, a couple of guys were in a deep discussion, their voices a bit too loud for the setting. I tried to focus on my work, but the name Serafina caught my ear. That's not exactly a common name, and it immediately piqued my interest. "I'm telling you, man, Drax and Serafina have been sneaking around at night," one guy, with a scruffy beard and glasses, was saying. His friend, a taller dude with tattoos peeking out from under his shirt sleeve, laughed. "Man, if anyone found out, there'd be some serious drama." Scruffy beard leaned in. I mean, I couldn't believe it either, but my buddy saw them at Moonlit Lagoon last week, all cozy and stuff. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. My heart raced, and my palms started to sweat. The name, the mention of secret meetings. It was too much to be a coincidence. But then, what were the odds? Chicago was a big city after all. Maybe there was another Serafina out there, involved with someone named Drax. Trying to calm myself down, I took a deep breath and mustered up the courage to approach them. "Hey, sorry to intrude," I began, trying to keep my voice casual. "But I couldn't help but overhear you talking about Serafina. Mind if I ask how you know her?" Both guys looked up, surprised. Scruffy beard raised an eyebrow. "Why? Who's asking?" "My wife's name is Serafina," I replied, trying to keep the trembling out of my voice. "Just curious." Tattoo guy snorted. "Small world, huh? But bro, there are probably tons of Serafinas in Chicago. Don't think too much about it." "Yeah, man," Scruffy beard added. "And besides, the Serafina we're talking about is into some artsy stuff like painting or something." "Does that sound like your wife?" Trying to put on a brave face, I laughed it off. "Nope, not at all. My Serafina can't even draw a stick figure. Thanks, guys." Returning to my table, I tried to shake off the unease, but it clung to me like a second skin. I wanted to believe it was a different Serafina, but a nagging doubt had settled in my heart. The events of the morning and this random cafe conversation were too coincidental, and the storm clouds of suspicion began to gather in my mind. Edit. Seriously, this week has been a roller coaster. Thanks for sticking around, folks. I'm still processing everything. We'll keep you updated. I've always been a man of logic, the kind who needs evidence before making any decisions. And that's what led me to our home's security system late that night. The uncertainty, the nagging doubts. I had to put them to rest, either to confirm my worst fears or to clear my wife's name. I told myself it would give me peace of mind. Booting up the system, I rewound the footage from the past week. Each night played out in fast-forward, familiar scenes of Serafina and me coming home from work, ordering takeout, watching movies, the usual couple stuff. But then, 2 nights ago, the scene shifted. It was around 1:30 a.m., a time when the world outside was still, and most were deep in sleep. The infrared camera caught a shadow moving towards our front door. The figure was tall, slender, wearing a cap that hid most of his face, but not enough. As he moved closer, the side profile became clearer, and my heart sank. Drax. I had seen his face once or twice in Serafina's old college photos. I never paid him much attention. To me, he was just a part of her past. But now, here he was, sneaking into my home in the dead of night. The footage showed him typing in the passcode to our front door, a passcode only family knew. The door opened, and he disappeared inside. My hands clenched into fists, nails digging into my palms. The clock ticked on, turning minutes into hours, and just before dawn he emerged, looking around cautiously before slipping away into the shadows. I felt a cold numbness spread through me. The weight of the betrayal was almost too much to bear. The pieces of the puzzle now fit together in a clear, painful picture. The half-dressed morning, the overheard conversation at the cafe, and now this footage. It all pointed to the reality I was reluctant to accept. I sat there in the dark, the glow of the monitor, the only light. Feelings of sadness, anger, and disbelief waged a war inside of me. The woman I loved, the one I trusted more than anyone else, had betrayed me in the deepest way possible. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside. One thing was clear: I needed answers, and I was determined to get them. Edit. This has been the hardest thing I've ever had to write. Every moment feels surreal, like I'm in some twisted nightmare. Thanks for the outpouring of support. I never imagined sharing this here would help, but reading your comments gives me strength. More updates to come. That evening was probably the longest I'd ever endured. I paced our living room, waiting for Serafina to return from work. My mind was a hurricane of emotions, swirling with anger, pain, and a tiny glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a reasonable explanation for all this. When the front door finally opened, I took a deep breath, attempting to steady my racing heart. Serafina walked in, her usual radiant smile on her face. "Hey, love," she greeted, but her smile faded the moment she saw my expression. "Jalen, what's wrong?" Without a word, I turned on the TV and played the security footage. The color drained from her face as she watched Drax enter and then leave our house. The silence that followed was deafening. I finally spoke up, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. "Sarah, how could you?" She looked like she was on the verge of tears. "Jalen, it's not what you think. Drax is just an old friend." "An old friend who sneaks into our house in the middle of the night?" I retorted, my patience wearing thin. She took a deep breath. "He was going through a tough time and needed someone to talk to. I didn't think you'd understand, so I didn't tell you." "That's your excuse? Secrets? Lies? In our own home? Sarah?" The weight of the betrayal was suffocating. She looked hurt. "I can't believe you're accusing me of this. After all we've been through, you really think I'd do something like that?" I felt cornered. "You're turning this on me, after what I just saw." Tears streamed down her face. "I never thought I'd see the day where my own husband wouldn't trust me. Drax needed help, and I was there for him as a friend. Nothing more." The room felt like it was closing in on me. I wanted to believe her, but the evidence, the secrets, the whispers, it was all too much. "So you expect me to just accept this? To believe it was all innocent?" She sobbed. "I just wish you'd trust me." The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension and unsaid words. Here we were, two people who promised to stand by each other, now miles apart in trust and understanding. The chasm between us felt insurmountable. The following morning was a blur of emotions. I had hardly slept, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. My morning coffee had lost its flavor, every sip a bitter reminder of the turbulence in my life. I decided to get some fresh air, hoping it would clear my mind. As I stepped out onto our porch, I noticed Luna, our neighbor, anxiously waiting by her front door. Luna was an enigmatic figure in our neighborhood, known for her love for plants and her strikingly beautiful blue-gray eyes. We had exchanged pleasantries a few times, but nothing more. Seeing me, she hurried over, her usually composed demeanor replaced with one of urgency. "Jalen," she began, her voice soft. I think you should see this." She handed me a small envelope. Inside were a series of photographs, each one like a dagger to my heart. They showed Drax and Serafina together, outside my house on various nights. Their body language spoke volumes, suggesting a familiarity that went beyond mere friendship. "I noticed him visiting when you were on your business trips," Luna admitted, her eyes filled with sympathy. "I thought you should know." I struggled to find words. "Luna? Why?" She sighed. "I've been through betrayal, Jalen. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, especially not someone living right next door. You deserve the truth." Feeling a mix of gratitude and anguish, I mumbled, "Thank you, I can't believe this is happening." Luna placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Trust your instincts, Jalen, and always remember, the truth has a way of surfacing." As she walked away, her words echoed in my mind. Here was an unexpected ally in my corner, guiding me to confront the reality I had been trying to avoid. It was another week of restless nights. With each revelation, the ground beneath me felt more and more unstable. But if I was to find the whole truth, I knew I had to keep digging. Remembering an old phone Serafina discarded a while back, I decided to see if it held any clues. But my tech skills were laughable, and I needed help. Enter Zeke, my childhood friend and a wizard with electronics. Zeke had been my go-to guy for any tech-related issues, from setting up my home theater to fixing computer glitches. I trusted him, and right now I needed someone on my side. Hesitatingly, I recounted the events of the past weeks to him. Zeke listened intently, his usually jovial face replaced by a solemn expression. "Let's see what we can find," he said, taking the phone from me. Within minutes, he managed to boot it up and bypass the security lock. "Let's check the messaging apps," he suggested, and there they were, a flood of messages between Serafina and Drax. I braced myself for the worst as we started scrolling through the conversation threads. The earlier messages were casual, discussing college memories and current life updates. But as time went on, the tone shifted. They began sharing dreams, fears, and secret desires. Then came the messages that felt like punches to my gut. Drax. "Every night with you feels like a stolen moment. I wish we didn't have to hide." Serafina. "Me too. It's hard pretending, especially with Jalen. I wish things were different." Drax. "Someday, we won't have to sneak around. We can be together, openly, without any fears." Serafina. "That's the dream, Drax. Just hold on a little longer." The screen blurred as tears welled up in my eyes. Zeke put a comforting hand on my back. "I'm so sorry, man," he whispered. The messages painted a clear picture. Their relationship was deeper and more entangled than I had ever imagined. The woman I had pledged my life to was dreaming of a future with another man. Edit. I'm at a loss for words. This feels like a cruel joke. Zeke has been a pillar of support, and I'm thankful for that. But the pain of these revelations is unbearable. To everyone sharing their stories and advice, thank you. I'm processing all of this slowly. I'll keep you updated. The fallout was swift and intense. I had imagined confronting Serafina immediately, but the weight of my discovery kept me paralyzed with pain. Maybe it was that hesitation that gave her the upper hand. It began subtly. Things would be out of place around the house. Personal items disappeared and then mysteriously reappeared days later. "Jalen," she'd coo, "you're becoming so forgetful. Maybe you need to see someone, get some rest." Then came the gatherings. At family dinners or outings with friends, she'd laughingly recount tales of my supposed lapses in memory or bouts of paranoia. "You won't believe what Jalen did the other day," she'd start, her stories making me sound unhinged and delusional. One evening, I overheard her talking to her sister on the phone. "I'm really worried about Jalen," she whispered. her voice dripping with fake concern. "He's been acting so strange lately, snooping around and accusing me of the wildest things. I think he might be having a breakdown." Soon, friends and family were looking at me differently. The hushed conversations, the pitying glances. I felt like a pariah in my own life. The more she twisted reality, the more I questioned my sanity. Maybe I was wrong. Perhaps those messages were innocent. Could the late-night meetings have been harmless? Desperation led to self-doubt. The gaslighting was working. There were moments I found myself staring in the mirror, wondering if the man looking back was indeed losing his mind. The worst part? The isolation. Friends, once close, now kept their distance. Conversations were brief, punctuated with awkward silences. Family gatherings became an exercise in endurance, with Serafina playing the concerned wife to perfection. The world as I knew it had shifted. Reality became a muddled, distorted reflection, and I was trapped in the center, struggling to find my footing. The weight of it all pressed down on me daily. Every whispered conversation, every sideways glance was a cruel reminder of the place I found myself in. Lost, doubting, and increasingly isolated. But I knew deep down that I couldn't live in this state of suspended disbelief forever. The answers, whatever they were, lay buried beneath layers of deceit. Determined, I decided to dig deeper into Serafina and Drax's history. I had to know how this began. A box of Serafina's old belongings, gathering dust in the attic, became my starting point. Sifting through it felt like intruding into another life, a life I was never meant to know. Between old journals and photo albums, a picture began to emerge. There was Serafina, noticeably younger, radiant with happiness beside Drax. They were in various places: beaches, mountaintops, city streets. Their smiles spoke of deep affection. I felt the pang of jealousy, a visceral reminder of the present. Then, buried among the pages of a diary, I found a folded letter, the edges yellowed with age. It was addressed to Serafina from Drax. Hesitatingly, I began to read. "Serafina, our love was never meant to be tangled in this web of family expectations and feuds. I'd give anything to be with you freely, without the shadows of our family's pasts looming over us. I still dream of the day we can be together, unburdened. Always yours, Drax." The pieces began to click into place. Further reading revealed a heartbreaking tale. Drax and Serafina had once been engaged, deeply in love, but torn apart due to a bitter family dispute. They had gone separate ways, nursing broken hearts, until their paths crossed again years later, after Serafina and I were married. The old flame, it seemed, had never died. They'd found solace in stolen moments, clinging to the memories of a love interrupted but never truly over. The realization was devastating. The foundation of my marriage was built on half-truths. The love I believed was uniquely ours was shadowed by a love story that predated our own. Edit. I'm shattered. Knowing the full truth somehow hurts more than the suspicion did. I feel like I've been living in someone else's love story, playing a part I never auditioned for. Thank you for being my sounding board, Reddit. Without you, I'd truly be alone in this. The house seemed eerily silent as I waited for Serafina to return from work. The emotions within me boiled, a mix of pain, anger, betrayal, and a fierce determination to face the truth head-on. She walked in, the clack of her heels on the wooden floor echoing through the hallway. Our eyes met, and the tension was palpable. Without uttering a word, I laid out the evidence before her. The photos, the messages, the letter from Drax. She scanned them briefly, then met my gaze with an icy, emotionless stare. There was no hint of the woman I once knew, the woman I'd pledged my heart to. This was someone else. "You've been busy," she remarked, her voice dripping with disdain. "Why, Serafina? Why all of this? Was there ever any truth to our love? To our life together?" She let out a derisive chuckle. You were the safe choice, Jalen. Steady, reliable, predictable. But passion? Love? Those were always reserved for Drax. You were just convenient." Her words were like sharp daggers, each one cutting deeper than the last. My mind raced, trying to grapple with the cruelty of her confession. So, all those years, our memories, the vows, all lies? I asked, my voice shaking. She shrugged. Sometimes we make choices out of necessity, not desire. I felt a rush of anger, my vision blurring with tears. I deserved the truth, Serafina. I deserved love, genuine love, not this twisted game you've been playing. She smirked. Life isn't fair, Jalen. You played your part and I played mine. It's time to move on. The coldness in her ease, the lack of remorse, it all hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't the Serafina I fell in love with, or maybe I'd never really known her at all. Leaving Chicago wasn't a fresh start. It was an attempt to escape the constant reminders of betrayal that seemed to lurk in every corner. I found myself on a highway heading to Seattle, not because it beckoned with promise, but because it was distant and unfamiliar. Each mile was a step away from what was, but not necessarily towards anything better. Seattle's gray skies did little to lift my spirits. Instead, they reflected the turmoil inside. I rented a small, dim-lit apartment away from the heart of the city. Its cold, undecorated walls mirrored the emptiness I felt. No warm welcome, just a space devoid of memories. I avoided contact as much as possible. The outside world seemed to move in vibrant colors while my existence faded into shades of gray. The laughter and joy of strangers felt alien, almost mocking. Meals were mechanical, eat to live, not live to eat. Sleep, when it came, was filled with dreams of confrontation, of seeking answers, of waking up to find it was all a nightmare. But each morning, reality reasserted itself with a cruelty that was unyielding. The faces at the local convenience store, the bus driver, the few coworkers I interacted with, they all became blurred images in the background of a life that felt more like mere existence. Connection seemed pointless. After all, the deepest connection I'd ever had was built on deception. Days turned into weeks, then months. The pain didn't fade. It merely settled, like a shadow I couldn't shake off. I stopped trying to outrun it, instead surrendering to its omnipresence. Edit. I wish I could tell you all that things got better, that there's a light at the end of this tunnel. But truth be told, right now, it feels never-ending. I read every message, every piece of advice, and while I appreciate them, the void remains. Thank you for listening, Reddit.